we go. Okay.
Yeah. So here we are on the last day of Cannes. I'm still in Chicago. Vagabond is still sorting through.
Yeah. I'm actually in Antibes right now. Um, I've been staying in Antibes at I rented a small villa where we stayed here. It was cheaper. Um, but
Oh,
yes, as we speak right now, they should probably be announcing the
hold on, Vagabond. Hold on a second. Okay, all right. We can continue. I had two windows open. Can you still hear me?
yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Um,
So you were saying,
they probably just announced the awards for Cannes already. It's 11 o'clock here. You can see the moon.
I see the moon. The moon sees me.
Yeah, and all week we've had this pool taunting us
Uh huh. Did
because
you
it's
get
too
in?
stuffed. No, it's too cold to fucking get in the pool,
Too
bro.
cold. Oh
I got
man,
a hoodie on. I'd put
good
up a
for
hoodie on, man.
bro. It's
It's
good for the
it's
street.
it's been a strange. Well, it's the last couple of days have been nice and warm, but in the evenings it gets pretty cool. It gets down to about 60, 55.
Mm-hmm.
During the day it's been getting up to 75 now, but when we were first here it was it was sometimes it was as low as 50 degrees in the evening and as high as 60 during the day.
That's
So
what it's like in Chicago. That's what's happening here.
I mean, there was a heat wave in New York. It was 90 something degrees in New York, and I'm in the
Nah, we
south of France, freezing my ass off.
we had that last week. So
So,
man, here we are. So they were going to talk about co-production, right? About what we're leaving, what you're leaving, what I learned a long time ago, and what you're leaving with now. The thing
well,
I got.
this is the thing that I was realizing. This sort of dawned on me in Berlin
Mhm,
of 2025. Yeah, 2025. When I was in Berlin in 2025, I realized this.
mhm.
Um, that you know black filmmakers in the U.S. are sort of double um, colonized. You know, we're internally colonized and externally colonized, right?
Mhm.
So we are. There is no support network for us within the United States, and there is no support network outside the United States. As you pointed out in your essay, um, former colonies of former African colonies can find funding from their previously colonial masters to create work. We don't have that opportunity. And so we are if you're a black American filmmaker, you're doubly sort of excluded.
Well,
You can't access any of the funding from the people who colonized you because you're still colonized and you're still living in a colony. You're still living a colonial existence within the country that you supposedly would call your own.
but now
So
let's
it's
talk about numbers though. So America plays they invest 62 cents, 62 cents for every American citizen. That's what it comes down to. Germany invests $87, and it goes down from there throughout Europe and around the world. We fund art, we fund culture at 62%, the richest country in the world at 62 cents, not 62% of shit, 62 cents, right, per citizen. And then we have to fight for that little pot, right? So what happens? Who gets left out structurally, right? I'm not even getting to the worst part, but structurally, it's part of the infrastructure. It's always been designed this way that black filmmakers or black cultural people, black artists. I mean, this is one of the reasons so many black artists have gone abroad and had such impact, you know. But but on top of
but is
that,
that the case? But that's not the case for filmmakers.
the case for filmmakers, well, look at what Marilyn
The
Monroe.
outside
Wait,
of maybe
wait,
outside of
look,
maybe. Melvin Van Peebles.
Melvin Van Peebles did leave. There's a
That's the
couple.
only person I can think of.
There's a couple other people who went and
Okay,
worked.
you would know. You would know.
It's not a lot, right? Why? Because we believe in Hollywood. We've been bred to believe in Hollywood. That there's an article I sent you that I sent you that page from Ebony, right? From 1957. It said, what did it say? Do Negroes have a future in Hollywood? And we're still asking the same question.
Well, we're creeping up on 2027, and we can answer that question. What is this, like 70 years later, right?
Yeah, and the other thing is outside of this lack of funding for culture in general, right? And the stripping away of funding for culture, the stripping away of foundations, the foundations that fund these things, right? So the few black people who were able to get something because of DEI might not get crap. No, I'm not gonna say might not. They won't get crap, right? I mean, like, I haven't received I haven't received maybe 3 grants in my life, right? And when I got them, I was not expecting them. You know what I mean? I was like, damn, I get paid to do this shit. I mean, I didn't want to do it for free, but it's like, but then depending on how you act, depending on like, do you fit into the neoliberal narrative, right? Today, I'm hearing people complaining about the W.E.B. Du Bois documentary that's on PBS right now, and it's not making some people happy because they left out Du Bois's international adventures and experiences, right? I'm like, well, what do you expect? PBS has a format you have to fit into, right? Either consciously or unconsciously, you're going to, in order to get the film done, you're forced to make certain compromises. I don't want to judge people on the compromises that they make, but I remember when St. Clair Bourne was doing the Black Panther film and PBS signed on to it, they started telling him what they wanted him to do. And he was like, no, you're not telling me what to do. And you're not giving me anybody that I don't want to work with, right? They don't like that, So St. Clair ended up not doing that. He ended up dying, not having worked on developing that film for about two years, and he never got to do it. Somebody else did it, So I mean, these are compromises we have to make. But in looking at what the EU is, just as an example, I mean, like financing for culture, like with the Black Film Workshop in London in the early 1980s, that came out of the Greater London Council, GLC. They started a black filmmaker workshop, right? And that workshop was financed by the TV station and the unions, right? So that they weren't competing with anybody. What happened is they were provided with equipment and a place to make their films, and then they got contracts from television to air the work that they made, right? And out of that came who? John Akomfra, Isaac Julian, Menelik Shabazz. There were people who they came out of a system designed to help them succeed. Right. But even with the success they had, it still wasn't what they really, really deserved based on what they did. Based on the impact of the work that they did, there was two feature films came out of the Black Film Workshop from people of African descent, and I think what was it, My Beautiful Laundrette was another one. But back then they considered Asian people black too. If you were Turkish or Asian in England, you were still black, right?
Turkish too.
Hey man, it was like Hey, they did not slice and dice. They said, "Nah, you ain't you ain't white, you black." I mean, it used to freak me out. I'm like, yeah, man, we're all part of this. And I'm from America. I'm only 20 years old. I don't know shit at that point. I'm like going, what is up with these classifications? But coming out of that, when the GLC ended, then everybody was, the cooperation, the co-productions with the EU, right? So their approach to filming cultural co-production is built on explicit philosophical foundation. Culture is not a commodity, and the market alone cannot be trusted to sustain it. The primary instrument is the Creative Europe Media Program, which funds development, distribution, and co-production of European audiovisual works. Euro Images, the Council of Europe's Film Fund, complements this by supporting co-productions between member states and a select group of associated countries. Together, these frameworks represent billions of euros in consistent, get that word, public investment, not philanthropy, not leverage ratios, but direct state commitment to cultural production as a public good. I'm like, what the hell is that? I mean, like, you know, the first time I read that, man, I was like, what country do I live in? Greatest country in the world, right? You know,
Somebody,
greatest country. Yeah, yeah. For some people,
somebody.
yeah. But even then, when we talk about working class filmmakers, they don't benefit from it either. You know, and
Well,
I'm
yeah,
not.
but I mean, like, when I but it's my contention that if you aren't in Hollywood and you're
Mhm.
not one of the top A-list directors, you're a working class director.
Yeah, yeah. This is true. This is true.
I mean, I made this point the other day where when I come to these things, I wear my Doc Martin boots, my jeans, my t-shirt, my hoodies. I don't get dressed up. I
Mhm.
refuse because I'm a
Mhm.
working class filmmaker. I want people to see I'm a boots on the ground kind of a guy. I'm not here to, wear an ascot and pretend that I'm somehow above it all. No,
Don't tell me
I'm in the trenches.
you didn't rent a yacht while you were in Cannes.
Rent a yacht.
Yeah.
I can't rent a rowboat. What the fuck you talking about, bro? I might I probably have enough money to get one of them paddle boats. You know what I mean? Like, you pedal you ass out into the water, but that you got to be on a lake. I'm not going on the Mediterranean in no paddle boat. You know? Yeah, I mean it. But and we should make something else clear though, because the as as supportive as the European Union is toward its filmmakers of color within the European Union are still struggling to get their share, right?
Back to the
Um,
Chinese every time. Yeah.
and so but that was so, like, I'm hearing filmmakers of color here in the European Union talking about their struggles with trying to get co-production financing and financing from their own countries, so like the BFI lottery or that kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I'm thinking to myself, we don't even have that struggle in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
because there's no apparatus for us to get anything.
Right. Right.
There's nothing. There's no apparatus for us to even be a part of.
Yeah,
Right? It's either Hollywood or nothing.
let me finish talking about the EU. The eligibility logic is rooted in the concept of European cultural identity. To qualify for co-production support, projects must demonstrate meaningful creative and financial participation from multiple European countries. The system rewards collaboration between smaller film industries, encouraging a Portuguese director to work with a Belgian producer and a Polish distributor, for example, precisely because the goal is to prevent any single dominant culture from absorbing the rest. The implicit enemy in the design of these frameworks is Hollywood's market dominance. The explicit goal is a viable, self-sustaining European culture, a screen culture. Now, this was challenged by the CIA back in the 80s. Um,
Really?
yeah, yeah, yeah. They were concerned. Remember the guy that used to be in charge of the little short guy? What was his name? He was in charge of the of a big agency, of a big American film agency, and he was at Cannes every year. And they were concerned because of this. What I just read, they felt challenged that they were being knocked out. Oh, they made a rule. I think the EU made a rule that American films could not have theatrical dominance, and they made a limitation on on the amount of films that could be played or the amount of theaters that they could play at one time in order to, so that they wouldn't push the European films out, you know.
Right.
And the CIA got involved and made a couple of visits and made some inquiries about whether this was fair or not, right? And I'm going to put at the end of my I wrote that essay so fast. I'm going to put at the end of my I might go back and re-edit because that's actually an important point. But so
So,
they
so the CIA saw it as a challenge to Hollywood's hegemony,
yes, right, totally.
because a lot of people don't realize that,
Mhm.
Hollywood is the propaganda arm of the United States, right? So it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah. We had an agent. We
it,
had an agency. We had an agency that if you went through or if you wanted to be included in any kind of a cultural program that was going to be presented by the U.S. Information Agency, you had to pass a set of principles. I mean, you had to pass scrutiny, right? And if you didn't represent American values, they wouldn't show the film, and the film would not be promoted abroad by
okay,
USA.
okay, but which American values? The ones that are
Ah, bah,
hegemonic,
bah, bah.
or
Oh,
the sales pitch?
of course, we ain't talking about blues values, right?
Yeah.
But let's say, but where does the colonial diaspora enter, right? So here's where the framework becomes promising and contradictory. Several EU member states, France, Portugal, Spain, Belgium, and the Netherlands, maintain formal bilateral co-production treaties with their former colonies and colonial diaspora nations. France's relationship with Francophone Africa cinema is the most developed example. The Centre National du Cinéma (CNC) has historically funded films from Mali, Senegal, Burkina Faso, and the Maghreb through agreements that recognize shared language and cultural lineage as legitimate grounds for partnership, meaning French. Now, before the CNC, there was the Ministry of Cooperation. The Ministry of Cooperation went out of business when Congo when Congo was like francophone dominated, and all of the mineral rights and things were coming to France, and that's partially how the Ministry of Cooperation was funded. But when it went anglophone, they had some changes came about. So this is how filmmakers like Ousmane Sembène, Jibril Diop Mambéty, and later Mohamed Saleh Haroun built internationally distributed bodies of work through French co-production money that acknowledged the colonial cultural bond as a financing relationship. Portugal maintains similar frameworks with Brazil, Cape Verde, Angola, and Mozambique. Spain with Latin America, and the Netherlands with Suriname and the Dutch Caribbean. In each case, colonial relationship, which created the diaspora, becomes the administrative rationale for cultural partnership. The diaspora filmmaker is eligible to the system because the system already has a category of them rooted in the former empire's geography and extraction history. Okay, I had added that part. So then there's this other thing. See, this is where I think we come in. The creative European neighborhood policy. Beyond colonial bilateral treaties, Creative Europe has extended partial access to non-European countries through its neighborhood and global strand, which allows filmmakers from countries showing cultural and geographic proximity to Europe to participate in co-production streams. Countries in the southeastern, in the southern Mediterranean, the Western Balkans, and parts of sub-Saharan Africa have access to this channel. The criteria are deliberately flexible, cultural affinity, historical relationships, and strategic interests all factor in. Now, there's a structural contradiction, right? What this means in practice is that the EU co-production system has an elaborate, well-funded architecture of recognizing diaspora relationships as long as those diaspora relationships run through European colonial history. A filmmaker from Dakar with a French producer is legible. A filmmaker from the south side of Chicago, whose entire aesthetic and intellectual lineage runs through the African diaspora tradition, who spent a decade in relationship with Africa Caribbean and European cinema, who operates completely outside Hollywood financial structure, that filmmaker is categorized simply as American. And therefore, as a competition, the system was designed to resist, right? I ain't in it. Okay. How many times did I have to say, I ain't in it, you know? Um, but the irony is precise. The EU frameworks are sophisticated enough to recognize that Usman Simbain is not Hollywood. They are not yet sophisticated enough to recognize that Floyd Webb is not Hollywood either, nor Vagabond, right? So the gap is where the argument for cultural refugee status lies, because this is what we're arguing about, right? Cultural refugee status, right? We don't benefit from this stuff. Plus, since January 20th of last year, there's an attempt to absolutely, it's like a, I don't want to minimize anything else, but it's almost like an attempt at erasure, you know, and the gap where the argument cultural refugee status lies is the EU's own stated values: cultural diversity, support for non-dominant voices, resistance to market homogenization. Logically, should extend to African American independent cinema if the category is American. If the category American is disaggregated the way the category European already is. A Breton filmmaker and a Bavarian filmmaker are not the same. A Hollywood studio and a Black independent filmmaker from Chicago are not the same. The frameworks that recognize the first distinction are intellectually equipped to recognize the second. They simply have not been asked to, formally, politically, and in writing. And that's the plan.
Well, the problem is that I think that most U.S. filmmakers, right, um, are drinking Kool-Aid, and that Kool-Aid is Hollywood flavored, right? And they don't even realize. I mean, how many people in the states are coming to? Let me rephrase. How many people of color are coming from the states to go to Cannes or EFM, European Film Market, or or in terms of television, any of the MIPCOMs, right? Um, Whether they be in London or here in Cannes. So it's like I'm not even sure if people are aware that there's another way to go about doing these things, you know. And you know, there's even we're talking about what we're trying to build right now is a third cinema, but in terms of a distribution platform, right, or a means to distribution, right. And so, for folks who don't know, Third Cinema was an essay that was written by two Argentinian filmmakers in 1969. The essay was called Towards the Third Cinema. In it, they explained that first cinema is Hollywood and capitalist in nature. Second cinema is European auteur cinema. And if I'm not mistaken, the term they use is navel gazing, right? And third cinema was from the third world, dealing with people's problems and dealing with them in a revolutionary manner in which they could decolonize themselves and stand on their own 2 feet. And I think that we, a lot of people are talking about the films themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of Hollywood or the European system. And then there is no third system. There is no third cinema apparatus by which we can do distribution, you know? And maybe that's where we are headed, right?
And this
Uh
is, it is where we're headed. It's definitely where we're headed. I mean, you know, the thing is, it's just starting. I mean, we're at a really bad part in our history. You know, we're in a really bad place in our history, but it's also a good place in our history because it's a good time to restructure. It's a good
well, no,
time.
the things are falling apart, right? And so there's all this
That's
chaos.
good, but that's good.
It is good. I mean, first, it's like, look, I mean, I don't know if I've ever spoken to you about this, but when Trump was first elected in 2016, right? Union Docs, and Union Docs is an organization out of Brooklyn, New York, that is a nonprofit that helps people with their documentaries, right? Union Docs had a meeting, a symposium, I don't know what you want to call it. And people were shocked that Trump had won, and they were trying to figure out, this is like this I think this meeting took place in late November, early December, right? He's not even president yet, technically. The election has just happened.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they're worried about what is the effect of that, right? Okay. And folks are, visibly shaken. Some people are on the verge of tears, and people are speaking up about what they fear. And the thing
Mm-hmm.
for me is that, what I took away from Trump was that there's a before and after. There's before Trump and there's after Trump. And everybody was feeling that. That was the reason for the meeting, right? And so the first thing that comes to my mind is this is what Trump got away with. And when I see somebody get away with something, the first question that comes to my mind is, what can I get away with? And so my question to the audience was, you're all here, pining for the battle days because the batter days are coming, right? But I'm not interested in going backwards. I'm interested in surpassing where we were, and leapfrogging over where we're headed into something better, right? And so my question was, where is it written that, okay, so the old rules no longer apply, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trump proved that the old rules no longer apply. We are living in a new world, right?
Mm-hmm.
But where is it written that him and his ilk must write the new rules? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they have proven that, you know, the facade that neoliberal facade that was up for so long has now proven to be exactly what it is, a facade. And so now it's torn down, and the whole empire has no clothes, and you're crying about whether or not we should, grab our old robe to clothe the empire. I'm not interested in clothing the empire. You know,
So
I'm interested in trying to destroy the whole damn thing. And maybe that's where our opportunities are. Now that everything has been, laid to bear, there are opportunities in this chaos.
you gotta go through Homeland Security when you come home, right?
Man, fuck Homeland Security, bro. Them niggas are always fucking with me. Fuck them niggas, bro.
Yeah.
Fuck them motherfuckers, bro.
Okay. That's enough of that. So look, so to understand why African American independent filmmakers and artists are increasingly looking towards
Look, I just gave them an excuse. They were gonna bust my ass anyway, so fuck them, nigga. Now I gave them an excuse.
Anyway, it's all in fun. It's all in fun. It's free speech. So anyway, to understand why African American independent filmmakers and artists are increasingly looking towards international co-production partnerships, you got to look at those stark reality of arts funding in the United States versus the rest of the developed world. This is what we just talked about. Federal government invests approximately $210 million annually through the National Endowment of the Arts. A figure that sounds substantial until you do the math. It's roughly, as we said, 62 cents per citizen, compared to Germany, which invests approximately 85 per capita in public art support. Canada at 4.73%, $4.73, and Australia at 6.91. European nations don't just fund artists differently; they treat cultural production as a public good, subsidizing state opera houses, symphony orchestras, independent film infrastructures, matters of national identity and civic life. The United States, by contrast, operates on a decentralized philanthropy-dependent model where every federal dollar must leverage 10 to 12 private dollars just to keep institutions afloat. Right, richest country in the world. So 62 cents, threadbare as it is, does not reach African American artists equitably. Independent research consistently reveals what practitioners already know with lived experience. 60% of all funding flows to 2% of cultural institutions, predominantly large mainstream organizations rooted in Western European art forms. Only 4% of total arts funding reaches organizations dedicated to serving communities of color. The budget gap is staggering. The 20 largest mainstream arts organizations in the country operate on a median budget of $61 million, while 20 largest arts organizations of color operate on 3.8 million, a ratio of 16 to 1. Private foundations, often positioned as correctives to government underfunding, direct only about 11% of their arts grant dollars to Black or people of color centered organizations, despite those organizations comprising at least 18% of the arts nonprofit sector. So they've stripped all that away. Everything I just mentioned is being stripped away. It's in court, right? PPS hasn't closed yet. You know, National Endowment for the Arts is, they're like struggling for air. So we're under arts disruption in this country. The arts has never really been that important here. Or else they would have put more, except under the WPA, all of that funding that went into documenting what people were going through. This is why we have Gordon Parks. This is why we have Dorothea Lange, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is why we have all of these people who did some incredible work and burn that memory into, it's an institutional memory of America,
Right.
So some good has been done, but not lately, and not anytime soon.
No. But
So
the funny thing too is that you're talking about philanthropic organizations, right?
Mhm.
But so many of those philanthropic organizations, right,
Mhm.
are essentially well, they're just NGOs in,
Mhm.
in 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 a classic sense, right? A non-governmental organization, right? They have um, the same sort of political apparatus, the same sort of political ideology as the state, right? They might be a
Mhm.
little bit more socially liberal, but most of those organizations are they're not in the business of um, funding radical art in any which way, shape, or form. Um, and so that has to be brought up too. The same people that aren't paying their taxes to the federal government are the same people who start foundations to give money to arts organizations, right? So like Jeff Bezos, he don't want to pay no taxes, and Amazon don't want to pay no taxes, but he's funding the Met Gala, which is, and what people don't understand is the Met Gala is a fundraiser. It's literally a fundraiser, right? But the
Mhm.
Met Gala might not need to be a fundraiser if folks like Jeff Bezos paid his taxes. And if Amazon, not Bezos, but Amazon paid their taxes, fuck Jeff Bezos. Amazon itself needs to pay its taxes, along with all these other corporations. And then we wouldn't need this philanthropic aspects in which they get more control, right? There's even more control that's being exercised in those philanthropic organizations over
Mhm.
the arts and over what people see. Um, More so than I would imagine in the government, because the government has to say, well, we at least need to be fair, and we need to at least have the illusion of fairness. There's none of that. If a philanthropic organization doesn't want to have an illusion of fairness, they just don't.
So
And so
hey,
that's part of the whole situation too.
so I'm looking at who we have on. Hey, look, you guys can send us messages in the chat window if you can see it. If you're,
Questions, comments, death threats.
yeah, comments, yeah. All are welcome. All are welcome.
Yes.
Internet death threats are, you know, they're funny. So you can
Yeah.
make those.
You could be
Anyway,
a keyboard warrior all day if you want.
so let's layer. So let's layering on that structural underfunding and the accelerating political assault documented in this report that I read, the dismantling of DEI frameworks, the rescinding of NEA and NEH grants, compliance dilemma, forcing Black-led institutions to choose between their mission and their survival, the closure of campus multicultural spaces that serve as incubators for emerging Black artists. What you have is not a funding gap, it's a calculated condition of displacement African American independent artists are not failing to compete. They are operating inside a system structurally designed to contain them. That is the context in which the question of international co production, cultural partnership, and what we're calling cultural refugee status must be understood. And I can just leave that there, right? And anybody
So
else
so
want? Mm-hmm.
so the thing too is that let's speak for a moment about the definition of a refugee, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we speak of refugees, and this is something that I've been thinking about recently because I've been writing a science fiction script called God's Only Man, uh, in which characters bring up these questions. So, but a refugee is someone that is
Mm-hmm.
not recognized by the state.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? And so
Mm-hmm.
it's like to go back to W.E.B. Du Bois, you're living a double consciousness, right?
Mm-hmm.
You are a person, you know who you are, but the state is saying, yeah, but we don't know who you are. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? You say you're something, and you come from this place that, for a variety of reasons, right, won't recognize you. We cannot verify who you are with the state that you're from, and so we have to trust you to say that you are who you are, right? And
I don't
so,
want to live like a refugee.
right. you know but I mean, it's an important philosophical thing to think about, where you know who you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're telling people you are who you are, and the state says prove it, and you go, well, how the fuck do you want me to prove it? You know what I mean? um you know, again, I'm thinking about these things because, again, I'm an anarchist, and so, proving to the state who you are is just it's ridiculous. It's just what are we doing? And so if you take those definitions and then you apply them, right, to black filmmakers in the United States when we go abroad, right, it's like, well, you've got that apparatus. You come from a place, right, that doesn't recognize you as an artist, right? And so I'm here. The United States government doesn't want to recognize me as an artist. It doesn't want to uh, uh, um, give me any support in the same way that it gives, say, AI data centers support for Microsoft or Facebook, right? It won't give me that support. And so when I come overseas, people like, well, you're getting support. You're coming from Hollywood. And it's like, but I'm not coming from Hollywood. Hollywood doesn't recognize me. And then you're overseas and they're saying, well, prove that Hollywood doesn't recognize you. It's the same. The concept that you came up with, this terminology of cultural refugees, is so apropos. It's so I was thinking of it in terms of internal colonization and external colonization, right? Like, internally we're colonized by the United States, and then externally we're colonized, um, by the rest of the world, right? So we live a double sort of
By
colonization,
perception. By perception, yes.
right?
By
By
perception.
perception,
That
right?
that
But then perception,
that,
but
that
but
we
you know,
live in the belly that we live in the belly of the beast, and because we're in the belly of the, what did Malcolm say? You just because you're in the oven doesn't mean you're not a biscuit. You know what I mean?
yeah, you
It's
know.
up- You know what I mean?
And so that's a difficulty that we're dealing with, right? That's a difficulty that it's a really great descriptor that describes exactly who we are and where we fit in things. But it also helps other people. So, like, you're talking about your one of your solutions is to talk to the European Union and say, can we, as black artists, apply under the rubric of being a cultural refugee, right? And now more than ever, because the NEA is on the ropes. Arts funding is practically non-existent, right? And we have to add, and I think that there are similar struggles happening here in Europe, right? You have a rise of I don't want to call it fascism, but authoritarian figures that are rising in Europe. You know, in France,
Yeah.
you got Marine Le Pen. In Germany, you've got uh, uh, the far
National
right
Front.
parties, yeah, coming up. You've got the same thing in the UK. Um, so there's probably a better understanding of us as cultural refugees than any other time before. You know what I
And
mean?
we've been,
If
and
Obama was the president and we were trying to pitch this, people would be like, "Yo, you're bugging right now," right?
right, right.
Uh, but now it's a perfect time because everybody understands that
Yeah,
you know the arts are against the ropes,
yeah.
right?
But
In
but the thing with
general,
refugee status, you know, we can go back to Ira Aldrich. Ira Aldrich, the black Shakespearean actor back in the 18th, back in the 19th century. He had to leave. He had to leave the country to play Othello, right? He ended up managing the Coventry Theater in London in like 1867. Josephine Baker. You know what I mean? You got so many people. George Lewis.
listen,
From,
I'm not far from where James Baldwin
mm-hmm,
was spent the last years of his life. You
mm-hmm,
know,
yeah.
I'm not far from that. And then
Mm-hmm,
I'm in Antibes right now. The first
mm-hmm,
time I ever heard of Antibes, right,
mm-hmm,
was Charles Mingus.
mm-hmm,
Charles Mingus live at Antibes, one of my favorite all time favorite jazz albums ever, right?
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
why was a cultural treasure like Charles Mingus, along with Dexter Gordon and Miles Davis and, like you said, Josephine
Eric
Baker.
Dolphin.
Why were they have to come out here
Mm-hmm,
to find an audience for their work and to be
yeah.
supported in any which way, right? Um, it's because they too were cultural refugees, right?
Yeah.
And like I say, it's just a really apropos
Mm-hmm,
terminology that speaks almost immediately. People can understand what the situation is, right? It does a lot of the heavy lifting for you.
mm-hmm,
Having the right terminology can do that.
mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
think it's brilliant
Yeah.
on your part, man. I
Yeah.
think it's really brilliant. I also think that it's really brilliant. I was talking to my co-producer Joe about this, right? Joe Caraja, and he was saying, man, just bringing the argument before the European Union as to black filmmakers in the United States applying for some sort of a cultural refugee status to be a part of the European Union and be able to access some of those funds
And, and,
is
and indirectly associated with their colonial experiences.
right. But
Be-
even
because
even if
because the whole American project grew out of their colonial experiments.
oh yeah, of course, yeah,
You know what
yeah,
I mean? So this is all interconnected.
right. But the thing too is that the thing about it is that it's easy to see, right? It's easy for everyone to understand. But then what Joe was saying is that even if you get nothing out of it, somehow we have started a conversation about this concept of cultural refugees, right? Or cultural refugeeism, right?
Mm-hmm.
For black filmmakers in the US, right? And not just black filmmakers, but all filmmakers of color. There's nobody getting no play, in the US.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so even if you bring breach the subject with them, that in itself is a victory. Just breaching the subject is in and of itself a victory. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's genius on your part, man. I mean,
Well,
I mean, well, here's the thing. You're literally taking what Malcolm was saying about our condition in the states, right? And saying, his argument against Martin Luther King Jr. was, you're trying to deal with this situation as if it's some sort of a domestic issue. And
Mhm.
Malcolm was like, no, this is an international issue, right?
Mhm.
This is we are treated as foreigners in our own land. So we should go before the United Nations
Mhm.
and bring our cause there, right?
Mhm.
And nothing against Martin or Malcolm, but they were both they both had their points, and they were but Martin was dealing with things in a certain sense, and Malcolm saw another front that could be opened, right?
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
and I think that what you're talking about right now is essentially in the vein of what Malcolm was talking about, and taking
Mhm.
our cause into an international audience, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
hoping that something can come of it. I mean, I just watched a video of Barry Jenkins, right, talking about how when he had a film that premiered at the Toronto Film Festival, his first film premiered at the Toronto Film Festival, and he
Mhm.
was working as a concessions manager at the Telluride Film Festival and could not
Mhm.
afford to go to the film
Mhm.
festival, right?
Right.
And that's something that the European Union does. If somebody from France, if you have a French, Belgian, UK co-production, and that
Mhm.
co-production somehow gets into, say, Venice, the Venice Film
Mhm.
Festival, right?
Mhm.
They support the filmmaker to go to Venice, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's not happening with us. You know what I
No,
mean? That's not
no,
happening with us.
it's not
You
an
know?
infrastructure. It's not built into the infrastructure. You know,
Yeah.
I mean,
And-
it only happens. It only happens if you go through something like USIA, U.S. Information Agency. You know, or like
which has been gutted.
U.S. Yeah, yeah. You know, um, so it's a, and but even then, you know, you've got that caveat. You know, does it represent the best interests of American values? Right? They don't
Yeah.
want, you know, like I
And I'll always ask, which American values? The one that had us hanging from trees? you
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. Yes, those values.
you
There
know?
was I showed the film. I went to. I was invited to a festival in Kenya by the Kenyan government, and I took a film over a James Baldwin film, as a matter of fact. It wasn't "Let the Church Say Amen." What was the name of it? Oh my God, I can't remember the name of it, but it was a film about him in church and about his coming out, right? And when I showed the film, oh man, because we showed these films not in Nairobi. We took the films to the provinces and we showed them in venues in the provinces, like like big halls. We didn't. I don't think we showed these films in any theaters, right? The music films everybody loved, but when it came to the dramatic, it was who was it? James Bond III played this character in that film, and it takes place in a church, you know, and and it got people riled up, you know, and this is not what we expect from America. This is not what we expect in American films, and I'm like, it's a real, you know, but that's because those, you know, they've got those missionaries from like Tennessee and Mississippi, you know, these are, you know, these are the missionaries. These people from Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia go to Africa and spread their American values, which means you need to kill gay people.
Right.
All that
Yeah.
kind of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
There's, there's a, you know, that's not my American narrative, right? Those aren't my American values, right? My American values are about tolerance, right? And and it's like talking to people in Europe about this work, right? Because the work gets done, and nobody really understands how the work gets done, you know, because they're so used to getting the support that they get institutionally. They think everybody gets it institutionally, especially America, the richest country in the world. Well, why
Right.
wouldn't America do that?
But then
Doesn't
it's even worse. It's even worse because they sort of, because the European Union and this model of co-production and their, as you read, their mission, right, is to combat the cultural hegemony of Hollywood, right? They
mm-hmm.
equate they equate Hollywood and its support for what Hollywood does as being something that we somehow would benefit from, and Hollywood spends way more. It has more resources and spends more money making and promoting its films than the European Union does. And so they always say, "Well, you have an apparatus," and it's like, no, that's not your apparatus. The goals and the mission of your apparatus and the goals and the mission of Hollywood are two completely different things, totally completely different things, right? I mean,
Mhm.
Hollywood's mission is to spread a quote unquote Americanism, right? I mean, let's just for a moment, again, I was talking about this earlier. Hollywood is the propaganda arm for the United States government. And
Always.
I can prove it because if you look at there's a whole there's a whole wing operation organization, I don't know what you want to call it, a whole section, let's just say that, a whole section in the Pentagon to deal with Hollywood. And if you want to do a film that gets the support of the Pentagon, you have to give them the script, they read through it, and they check for American values, right? Now, people think, well, what films are getting that kind of support from the Pentagon? Want me to tell you?
Mhm.
Transformers. All the Transformers movies get that gold star from the Pentagon, right? Almost every single goddamn Michael Bay movie gets that gold star treatment from the Pentagon, and the Pentagon will give you they will give you consultants, equipment, all of that, and it helps. They're literally helping to finance those Hollywood films, but they have to be within the ideological framework of whatever it is that the Pentagon is pushing in those days, right? And
And
so,
Transformers is absolutely, I mean, as an adult, I find that unwatchable, right?
yeah, I
Constant
mean,
destruction, constant destruction. I mean,
but
it's like it's almost unintelligible, you know.
right, but
I
I mean,
mean, things that
well,
like,
here's the thing.
but it's
I always
spectacle,
equate,
pure
and here's
spectacle.
the Marvel films also. The
Yeah,
Marvel films are also
they're
tied into the Pentagon,
right.
right? And
CIA, the CIA in Wakanda.
right, you know, to the point where it's like it worked its way right into the damn story itself, you know.
Right,
Um,
right. The same
so
people who
so
killed Patrice Lumumba, line it up, line it up with Wakanda, and not trying to take and not trying to take the vibranium.
so in a certain sense, I understand how the European Union can look at Hollywood and say, "You guys, you're a monolith. You have, you're a giant." And it's like, yeah, but we're not a part of that. We aren't a part of that. We're ostracized by it. Just the opposite. We're pushed away from it, right? I mean, even people who want to even people who want to be down are not put on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, what if you don't want to be down at all? Like so and
Mm-hmm.
so. I'm among that number. I don't want to be down. I don't want the Pentagon reading my script and telling me what I do can and can't do. I don't want nobody reading my script and telling me what I can and can't do, but especially the Pentagon. Um, but
Well, I mean, that's what happened. That's what happened with uh, Jesus and the Black Messiah. You know, it's a straight FBI narrative as to who the Black Panthers are that they
yeah,
repeat over and over again. They feature scenes in the movie that never happened, right? It looks, it's like it's not the history that I know. It's not even a history that you can look up. You know, no cop ever got shot in the face. No woman ever sat in the Black Panther office and incited a firefight sitting in the window like she was, like she was darning socks. You know,
well,
so
it's like
these, yeah,
but if you look at a lot of these films, right? So it's like you know, in the '80s we had a lot of this, even into the '90s, where you have the white savior movie, right? So even when the films are about us, it's about it's not about us, right? It's Mississippi Burning. It's about the two white cops who find the bodies of those. civil rights workers. It's not about the civil rights workers. It's not about what happened to them. It's about how the FBI was the fucking hero in the movie, right? This is constant. This is like a constant thing. Even when our story is supposed to be told, it's told from the perspective of someone who isn't us.
Mhm.
And this is a constant annoying thing. This is the same thing with what you're talking about with Judas and the Black Messiah. That's a film about an informant. It's not a film about
Mhm.
Fred Hampton. It's a film
Mhm.
about an informant. And people don't really get that. Even Spike's, what was the movie he did with about the KKK? I can't remember the title of it. Um, where
Mississippi
the
Burning.
No, 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 the Spike Lee film
Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa,
with
whoa. I
Adam
can't.
Driver and John David Washington. It's like John David Washington is infiltrating the KKK, but it's the
Yeah,
white guy who's infiltrating for him, right? And it's like,
right,
again, it's like it's not a narrative that's told from us, right? It's
right.
not our experience fighting the KKK. It's not the Deacons of Defense. You know what I mean? It's not that. It's
Hmm.
always filtered through this other lens of Americanism, right?
Hmm.
And that's something that probably
Black Klansman, Black Klansman. Thank you, Tom
Black
Hamlin.
Klansman.
My
Yes,
old
thank you.
buddy, my old buddy Tom Hamlin is here. We used to work together down by Battersea Power Station. You know Battersea Power Station's Vagabond from that Pink Floyd album,
Oh, yes, yes,
and the
yes, yes,
pigs
yes,
and the
yeah.
pigs and the floating pigs.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Iconic picture of Battersea. Yeah, we had a studio right near there when I was living in London. Welcome,
So
Tom, and welcome Stephanie Graham, and my business partner Robert Brescia is on here. Thank God for him. Uh, and Ron Mulvihill and everybody else that I don't know. I want to welcome everybody. We've been just running our mouths, and we're almost at our hour too. Does anybody have? Oh my God, he just reminded me of Bubble and Squeak. Oh Lord, yeah, he introduced me to Bubble and Squeak and Bangers and Mash. Hey Tom, that's how I got to be friends with Bourdain, with Anthony Bourdain. So yeah. But anyways, anybody have any statements, any questions?
are there any filmmakers who have maybe not thought about how they have been doubly ostracized? Are there any filmmakers that have gone overseas and dealt with the things that Floyd has dealt with in the past that I'm dealing with now in the present? Uh, I mean, I find that a lot of filmmakers in general don't think about the rest of the world. You know what I mean? I A lot of filmmakers I come across don't know about the marche. They don't know about the Cannes market.
Right.
They don't know about the European film market. They
Yeah.
don't know about MIPCOM, you know what I mean,
This
which is television, but MIPCOM,
this is an
they
issue.
don't.
This is an issue that I had when I was, because I've had my dalliances with Hollywood when I was invited out there to work and stuff, and like when I would talk to people about that, no one was there. No one wanted to go. I told you there was one guy that I met at one of the markets, and he went with VHS videotapes of him teaching graffiti, teaching people how to do graffiti. He went there with nothing. He didn't know anybody. He just had these graffiti. Man, 2 years later, I saw this guy. He was making about $100,000 a year off of these videos because everybody in Europe at that time, this is in the '80s, everybody wanted to learn how to do graffiti. He ended up with a TV show, a TV series in Europe on doing doing graffiti from
Well,
the
so
from
here's so here's here's
the,
here's so here's a strange thing, right? I just watched a video on Instagram about how Beat Street, the
mm-hmm,
eastern the eastern Germany. So Beat Street comes out what 1982,
mm-hmm,
uh, or it's 82 or 84, can't remember.
mm-hmm,
But Beat Street comes out, and the East German government says this is a great film to for us to screen in East Germany because it'll show how the failures of American capitalism and how it treats, its Black Americans, right?
Hmm.
And how, it'll show the ghetto and show people struggling and so on and so forth. And what had happened was is that instead of the young people in East Germany taking that message, they might have taken that message, but instead of taking that message, the more powerful message, the message that they really took was that this hip hop shit is really, really cool. I want to break dance. I want to be a DJ. I want to be a graffiti artist. I want to rap.
Tag some stuff, right? And they
Right.
tag.
You know what I mean? And so and that literally, introduced it was Beat Street and Wild Style that literally introduced all of those concepts to Europe through those films, right? And so, okay, Beat Street, it's a dated film. It's I look at it as a time capsule, right? It is a Hollywood production, but you
Hmm.
look at how well that film traveled
Hmm.
overseas, right? I mean,
Hmm.
you and I are old enough to know about how to have experienced this whole bullshit about how black films don't travel.
Oh, let me tell you that story, right? So they're telling people black films don't travel, right? Now, what it turns out is they do travel. They just don't report it. They just don't report the international sales.
Right,
You know? And so it turns out like Blade, right? The first Blade, I got this guy that I was working with in Indonesia, right? And we used to text back and forth over one of those early chat things. Um, I texted him one night, and I said, so what are you doing? He says, I'm standing in line around the corner in Indonesia, some city in Indonesia, waiting to get in to see Blade, right? He says it's been like this every night since it opened, right? It turns out Wesley Snipes was like a superstar in Indonesia, but we don't ever get that stuff. You know what I mean?
right.
I got the
So so
pictures. I
so
got
maybe
pictures.
that's but maybe that's the MO, right?
Mhm.
To not tell us
Right,
if there's no data, right, as to how well our
yeah,
films do overseas, then
right,
they can completely say, well, your film doesn't do well overseas, and then
right,
they can say, well, we're either not going to greenlight this or we're not going to give you the
yeah,
budget that you deserve,
right.
right?
And then I'm sitting at a theater on a dock in Tanzania watching Willie Dynamite, right? Across the street where Muhammad Messenger God is playing, right? And every night you got the people who went to see Muhammad Messenger God going to see Willie Dynamite the next night, right? This is the kind of stuff that I've experienced. And then like we got a black film, it was either a kung film or a black exploitation film in '82. They were bringing these things back, and sometimes double features of this stuff, man. It's like there's an afterlife of these films abroad that nobody ever reported on.
But here's the
These.
funny part. So here's the thing. I've been working on this documentary,
Mhm.
frustratingly enough, on Abiodun Oyewole of the Last Poets. And the Last Poets, for those who don't know, are hip hop before hip hop had a name. Okay. And Abiodun's a founding member of the group. They put out a record in 1969 called The Last Poets, which was pretty much just rhymes and percussion. Okay. It's sort of the precursor to hip hop. One day, I'm talking to Abiodun. Now, Abiodun lives uh, on Morningside in Harlem. Uh, and he says to me, "You'll never guess how far the Last Poets work traveled." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he said, "W- "I had been. We got an Albanian super. He'd been my super for 10 years, and he knew me. We were friendly. We always talked and whatnot. And then suddenly it dawned on his Albanian super. One day his Albanian super comes to Abiodun and says, Abiodun. He goes, what's up, man? He says, I didn't know you were in the Last Poets. He's like, yeah, man, of course. And he says, we used to listen to the Last Poets in Albania. And
Yeah.
so we don't know that. We didn't know that, right? Nobody knew that.
Yeah.
And then you come to find out that you know, this stuff travels all over the world, right? It's the
Well,
same thing
American.
with same thing in Ireland, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah,
Irish saw the Irish, you look at the Bloody Sunday, right? Bloody Sunday and the organizers of that march were organizing it based on the principles that Martin Luther King had set forth just a few years earlier, and the
yeah,
March on Selma, right?
yeah.
And so, people identify with our struggle.
So this is just proof of the idea that the only real American culture, the only real American culture,
Is
not
black
warmed
culture.
over European values, not warmed over European culture, is the culture of African America, the culture of Native America, all of these things that make up this mongrel called America, right?
Right.
Which they want to try to push back, push it all back. It ain't working. It shit ain't working, right? They're going to have their moment, and and all we have to do is keep on pushing. We have to
Well,
keep
I
pushing.
just, I just, I just ran into some folks in Cannes that were young people that were online, right? And I spoke about this, and I said, America itself doesn't have a culture. There is no American culture, right? I mean, the only American culture America really has is Black American culture, and they agreed, right? And then this guy was like, "Yeah, but we got American culture, like down south, we." And I go, "Oh, stop right there, stop
Mhm.
right there. There are regional cultures in the United States, but there's not a unifying American culture that doesn't have something to do with Black folks." And he was like, "Oh, damn, you might be right." And I've
Mhm.
had this conversation over and over again about how the only culture that America has, the only real true culture that America has is Black American culture, right?
And it's
And
so fluid.
yet
It's
and
so
yet and
fluid.
yet that doesn't travel, right?
It travels. I mean, I actually got a paper where I calculated what the value of African American intellectual property is since 1900. I haven't
Jesus.
published it yet. Haven't published it yet because I'm trying to, I like to get my numbers and my methodologies right. So when I'm up at 2 o'clock in the morning, I can make a lot of mistakes, and I do.
Right.
So, but anyway, we're coming on. We're on an hour and 5 minutes, and I want to cut it here because. But before I go, I want to see if anybody wants to. Anybody got any questions, statements? You're free to join in. I know we love to run our mouths, so we'll take a rest. Does anybody have anything that they want to say? Going once, going twice. Okay, folks, we're going to end this now. Thanks for coming in. We're going to try to do this more. This seems like we're getting some good reactions to this, and I just wanted to try it. This is all part of Blackness Network, blacknessnetwork.com. Let me put it in the and BWC TV, BWC.TV, right? Hold on, let me see. Let me type. I type really slow, which is why I have to stay up all night to do stuff. Blacknessnetwork.com and blackness.tv and our online Black film magazine, BFM Mag. Yeah. Oops. And I'm and I got new glasses, but I don't know what the deal is. Oh, yes. Ron, hey, Ron, okay, Ron Mulvihill. Ron Mulvihill has a film he made in Tanzania that was nominated for Academy Award.
Whoa.
Yes, yes, yes.
When
And
when was when did that all go down?
hey, what year was that? Was that 1980, 88 or 89, Ron? He made his two films was Ron, give me the titles too. Let's share this information about your film. Yes, and I'm going to send you a non-exclusive agreement. because I want to put it on likeness.tv. Oh, it was in the running 2001. It was
Wow.
the 21st century, not that long ago. And because it was an African film, you know, if he had done an Albanian film, he'd still be making films, like, you know. But yeah, Magamizi, the ancient one, that's the one. Yeah, and yeah. Ron is a good guy. He's part. He's kind of like partially involved in. He's from UCLA. He knows all of the LA Rebellion people. I know he knows. Um, who used to work in the equipment room at UCLA? Billy Woodbury. Billy Woodbury worked in the equipment room at UCLA forever. You know, while he
But
was
I
making.
also want to give a shout out to Warrington
And we
Hudlin
went to Dublin. Yeah.
with the
Okay.
with the Black Filmmakers Foundation,
Yeah.
who tried to sort of fill the gaps in all these things, and is still doing so. You know what I mean? Still working
Yeah.
hard and doing so. I just want to give a big shout out to Warrington because he's been doing that work and he's still continuing to do that work. And he's sort of like I think he sees himself as sort of the spoke. I mean, I'm not the spoke, the center of the wheel in which he
Mm-hmm.
can connect people to all these other
Mm-hmm.
different spokes
Mm-hmm.
out
Mm-hmm.
coming out, and
Mm-hmm.
he's been doing that work for a really long time, and doing it out of love and out of because he sees the need.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's time for us to figure out new tactics and new strategies
That's what we're doing.
going forward. Yeah,
That's what we're doing. Okay. All right, folks. Thanks for checking in, Vagabond. Thanks. Have a safe trip
thank
back.
you.
Have a
I
safe trip
will do my
back.
best.
And we'll be planning that screening of Legally Drugged. We got 10 being planned for upstate New York. We're going to do a couple here in Chicago. And
Yes,
all right. And be sure to check out greegreefilms.net for Mangamizi. Okay. And
and follow us on Instagram because that's the way we can communicate with everybody and build this community,
yeah,
build an audience. You know,
right. We have to build an audience and we have to build a community because that's
so
how we're
follow
going
us on Substack, on
to.
Facebook, on Instagram, on all that social media stuff. As much as we
Oh,
have to, as much as
yeah.
we can't stand it, it's the way it is a means of communication. So
Yeah.
please,
All we need is an audience of 100,000 around the world who want to contribute $5 a piece to join our cause, right?
yeah,
And we're fully functional, right? So
yep,
yeah, the other thing is our film Legally Drugged is going to be distributed on the Artini network. That's ARTINII.pro, and this is a platform where you can do film distribution to anybody you want to. You can set the terms, the prices, and they have a proprietary piece of software that you download to a computer, and you can project it from your computer, cinema quality. Okay. So, all right, folks. Good night, good day, and talk to you all soon. And if you want to
all right,
email, hold on. Any emails from me? Oh, you can contact me through Substack. You can send me messages. All right. Okay, Tom, good to see you, man. Me and Tom, we had a good time in London, man. Except for one thing, but everything else was cool. We had one obstacle, and I won't mention its name. I don't want to conjure it up. Okay, all right, everybody, bye. Okay.
thanks.
Oh, by the way, this conversation is going to be recorded and it's going to live here on Substack. I may take it off and do some edits and put some graphics and things on it. So and do and put some illustrations, but I don't know yet because it takes a little bit of extra time. But I will be doing it. It will be turning up on bfmmag.com, and it automatically goes to YouTube. So, okay. Talk to you guys soon. And it's really good quality. I'm really impressed by what this looks like. Okay. All right. Okay, guys.
Yeah.
Take care. Okay, bye-bye.